I usually eat, and that's why I have phlegm. So,
Oh, thank you. That's the first thing that you just said for the podcast. I do not control this. I do not control the first.
I know you don't. But you
it's
get
all-
me talking about random things, and suddenly, yes. Okay, so for all you people out there, so I often will eat right before, because it's 7 o'clock, and we eat from 6 to 7, and that just I get all hacky right afterwards.
So let me
But
ask
today
you,
I didn't, so I don't need to.
do you guys, is your dinner pretty well scheduled? Like, are you pretty disciplined at 6 o'clock thereabouts is when you eat?
Yeah.
Good. I mean, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
For us, we're not that disciplined. Well, that's not even the right word. It's not a matter of discipline. It's a matter of
Scheduled or
yeah. Vanessa sometimes works till 7, and then you eat at 7:30, 8 o'clock. In fact, tonight, the grill's going. I cooked some chicken thighs. They're almost cooked, but they're not quite ready. We won't eat probably till 8, which, kind of like sleep. You go to bed. You should go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time every day.
do you do that? I do.
I wake up at the same time. Going to bed is more challenging. I get up pretty much at 6 a.m. every day. But I would love to go to bed at 9:30 every night.
Oh, man. Wouldn't it be great to go to bed at like 9:30 and get up at like 4 every day?
Well, I don't need to get up at 4.
Even
not,
5.
Let's
5.
Not, yeah, 5. Yeah.
5.
Yeah. To me, I mean, I don't know. It was just at some point. By the way, welcome to Open Door Podcast.
Hello, everyone. I'm
yeah.
Brian. This is Joe.
As I was learning about sleep hygiene, the idea, how do you prepare? How do you sleep better? Is the idea that you would go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time. And I'm like, well, why would I want to wake up at 6 a.m. on a Saturday? I'd like to wake up at 8:30 or 9. But at some point, I just was like, well, this is the time I'm going to wake up. And it was really reinforced by a son who goes to bed when he goes to bed, but he wakes up at 6 a.m.
Every day.
every day. And it's like, if he's up, I'm up, Okay. Well, anyway, it's the Open Door Podcast. You've heard a bunch of small talk that has not
Absolutely,
much to do with anything, really.
No.
But it is a glorious summer night. It's all I could do to drag myself in here because I was out on the back porch. I got the charcoal going. I've got chicken thighs cooking. I'm like,
Yum.
But I'm going to spend some quality time with you and with folks who are here to listen. And I want to thank you all for being here. And it really is glorious. And in days like this and being outside, these are the times when I spontaneously worship. Because I'm kind of overwhelmed with how wonderful this world is that we live in. And of course, it's blue sky sentiment, right? So when we listen to Blessed Be Your Name that says, I will bless you whether everything is great or everything is terrible, it's a little easier to bless him when things are pretty awesome. To be honest. And I know there's some people in our community right now that are really, really struggling, that are on the flip side of that coin.
Yeah.
And I'm with you,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's, and doesn't it seems like to me that, the older you get, the more you have both joyful and sad all at the same time,
Yeah.
So, and, because life changes. Life gets more complex as the older you get, and the people things change. It's like, so yeah, today's a glorious and beautiful day, and I'm enjoying it, but I'm also keenly aware of the people in my life who are grieving and are sad and struggling, and this is life. It's not the way it's supposed to be yet. One day.
Do you recall the song "Both Sides Now" by Joni Mitchell?
No.
Oh my goodness.
Both Sides by Joni.
Both Sides
Sorry,
Now.
Joni. I know the name Joni Mitchell. I have zero information about. Oh, wait a minute. Is she the one got injured? Is she the one that paralyzed neck down, or is she a singer?
She's a singer. Don't worry about it. She's 78. She's one of those from the 60s, 70s, one of those pillars of
Okay.
folk music, and she wrote a song called "Both Sides Now" that Judy Collins made very popular. But it's just a reflection on life, and I've looked at life from both sides now, from win and lose, and still somehow it's life's illusions. I recall.
I was thinking of Johnny Erickson Tata.
Well, I don't know who that is, but anyway.
Okay, so what? I'll look up Johnny Erickson, and you look up Tata. Johnny Tata.
No, you look up Joni Mitchell, and
I'll look up Joni Mitchell. You look up Tata.
Any of you who are listening who realize that your pastor doesn't know who Joni Mitchell is, just put a comment in there that admonishes him. That would be.
And the same thing for Joe, that you don't know who Johnny Erickson Tata is. So, yeah, it works both ways.
It does. It does. Anyway, it's a wonderful reflection just on, as we kind of move through life, that we recognize that things are not black and white, that we see things a certain way, and then as we kind of move through life, our perspective changes,
Yeah.
And
perspective is so huge.
Yeah.
In how you see something. Because, you're seeing the day and you're like, this is a beautiful day and I'm worshiping. Now, somebody else would just look at it. Today was a hot, miserable day, and what's there to be worshipful about?
Yeah. Well,
right?
I would say that I felt differently earlier today. 5-6 hours ago, I was like, oh, God, it's day. Oh, goodness. I need it to be over.
Perspective is so everything.
Yeah. Well,
especially when your feelings are involved, man.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Which we've talked about that.
Feelings are the seasoning of life, right? It's depending on what you put into that. You could be eating something that is wonderful, but without the right seasoning, it's bland, or it's too much. It's, you feel it too.
You're a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
But
let's talk about your message.
Let's talk about the message. Yeah. Grace and humility, Boaz and Ruth meet. It's this beautiful boy meets girl moment. Even though they don't know it yet, we do, because we know the rest of the story. She's this wonderful, amazing woman who's working hard and is humble and is gracious and grateful. And he is a man who takes care of people and is upright and he loves to bless people and they meet, and it's this series of seeing each other, and she's responding to him and him to her, and it's just blessing after blessing after blessing. And I started with the message with, the key to getting on God's good side has to do with humility, because God opposes the proud and gives grace to the humble. And that's kind of in a macro, just eternal sense. The people who are humble, repent of their sins and turn to Jesus and say, I need you, Jesus. Yeah. I'm needy, but then there's also, humility enables blessing in this life too, and that's kind of where we're seeing here. And God, and I don't know how much I pointed this out, but God works through individuals like a Boaz, and the scripture is just filled with examples of it's through particular individuals meeting people where they are and taking care of them. This is how God works usually to help people. It's through people helping other people. So, yeah. Okay,
I've got kind of two things. One is a question, one's a general observation. I'm going to save the question for second, because the observation is a bit surface level and silly. But It was something that I thought of on Sunday, and I kind of stifled, you'll forgive me, I stifled a giggle when I thought about it, because I wondered, because what Boaz did is he wasn't the closest relative. So he needed to go and present the opportunity to the closest relative to say, would you like Here's, to step in and fulfill your duty as this
Mm-hmm.
relative with this young woman who, whose husband has passed away. And the guy passed, and so Boaz is like, well, that's me then. You know what I'm talking
But
about?
we haven't talked about this part yet.
Well, I know, but in my mind,
It's coming. It's coming.
okay.
Yeah.
But when I thought about that, I wondered if, because he knew who she was, if he was thinking, and this is maybe a preamble to what you're coming to a little bit, if he was going, oh, please don't, oh, please don't, oh, please don't, because, was he feeling a connection to her before that and realized that he had an obligation, not to her specifically, but to this other individual who was ahead of him in line? Do you know what I'm saying?
I think so.
It's not really a question, and we haven't got there yet, but it was something that really I started to go, if it were
Interesting.
me and this, and this vibrant, strong, hard-working woman just showed up and I had an opportunity to help her and I myself was not married or whatever, it would be like, wow, oh gosh, this is not my role. I can
Yeah.
help her in a limited fashion, but ultimately somebody else is in the rightful position there.
And this is partially where I'm going to go Sunday is well, first of all, the story doesn't say, right?
Yeah.
You can't answer a question that the story doesn't answer. However, it is interesting that after this moment, which all happens in 24 hours, well, less than that, about 12 hours, is then 2.5 months pass, 3 months pass, and nothing happens. And it's like, is Boaz waiting for that other guy to do something? And he never does. And so that's what is ultimately going to kick Naomi into, okay, we need to help this thing along a little bit, matchmaker kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it is eventually going to send Ruth to the threshing floor and all of that, because it's like he's waiting because it's not really his role
Right.
to do so. He's a kinsman redeemer, which, yeah, we need to get to that, explain what that whole means, but set it aside for a moment, other than he's supposed to be somebody to take care of people. But it's like he's not the closest. Somebody else is supposed to do the job, but they never do it. So, yeah, that's an interesting observation.
Well, and it was, like I said, it was maybe a little shallow. And it leads me to the question I have, which is, if you are a single Christian, and you may not have an answer to this, but, I do remember in my 20s as a single Christian wondering in what manner God was going to introduce me to my spouse, and feeling longing and loneliness and that kind of, and maybe, anxiety and despair. How is this all
Never
going
going
to
to
work
happen.
out?
Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, all that.
And I
Yeah.
wonder what this story tells us, or, tells somebody who is still waiting and still hoping or whatever, about God's ultimate fulfillment of that connection. So I'll throw it out there. You may not have a prepared answer. I don't have one, but it was just something that kind of settled in my brain a little bit.
I think that's a great question for me to ponder for Sunday.
Okay.
I think that's more of a question to think about over Sunday going forward, because there's a random meeting, and it's, yeah, you're right. It seems like there's all these fireworks, but then nothing happens. And that's the end of chapter 2. Nothing happens, but it's like this little interlude at the end of chapter 2, at the beginning of chapter 1 is all like, well, what is God doing? And Ruth doesn't know it. She has no clue what's happening, but Naomi does. And there's a perspective there that someone who's older, who knows God better, who just has life better, I think can help, that sees sometimes things that people don't.
Yeah.
And there's a message about who God is to us when we don't see his goodness.
Yeah.
And so that's an interesting help me spur on to think about Sunday.
one of the things that was just thinking about as you were talking is, at least from Ruth's perspective, she was, I'm going to move along through life. I'm not looking for this to occur.
Oh, right.
Right. I am just taking care of the people in my life. I am living.
That's it.
I'm trying to live a faithful, loving, responsible, respectful life.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm not seeking, God's just like, I've got this handled. So if you just want to move along with your life, do what you can do to live obviously Christ wasn't part of what she was thinking, but Christ was there. Is that if you're focused on Christ and you're focused on what can I do to love and to take care of people,
be a good person, yeah,
right, that you'll be surprised. And that was a little bit of my experience, frankly. 27 years old, working on a cruise ship, which is not where you expect to meet somebody that's going to be your life partner. And my focus I was reading the Bible daily. I was just trying to do my job well. And then Vanessa showed up.
Yeah, I think Naomi had made it abundantly clear that the possibility of her getting married was close to nil.
Yeah.
Because it was a very racist period of time. They're not godly people around there. She laid it out to expect to be mistreated. But she came anyhow. And so I don't think she was looking or expecting love. She certainly didn't go to that particular field looking for this circumstance.
You mean Ruth, right? Not
Ruth. Yeah, okay. It was random from her perspective. So, but I think your point is this image, this example, which in part the book of Ruth is meant to just be an example of what do you do as a single person? Just live a good life, do the right thing. And as one person has said, work on being somebody that somebody would want to marry. Right?
Yeah.
But you're not married, but be a kind of person that someone would go, now that is a person, a man or a woman that I would like to have a relationship with. By being a good person, taking care of the people in your life, working hard, doing everything you can, being grateful and kind and all of that sort of stuff.
Well, what do we know about Boaz? Single, how old was he? What do we know about that?
We don't know a lot more than what it says. He apparently is single. We don't know his age. He could be a widower. It's possible because it's nowhere does it say his age. And certainly men can father children much older, so we don't really know his age. He could be basically the same age. We don't know, but we do know this: he's probably not too young, because he's a man of great standing in the city. He's well off. All of these things, he has the respect of the elders, so he's probably not young.
Right.
And so maybe he never married. Maybe he's a widow. The other thing we know is we know who his grandmother is. It's Rahab from Jericho, in the book of Numbers, who she was not an Israelite and a prostitute, so a little scandalous, etc. And so he has a little bit of a history of seeing the good in people when the rest of the community doesn't. So,
yeah, definitely there was. Well, I mean, Rahab is just a very interesting story for me, that we have a woman who is not an Israelite, not part of
prostitute.
Yeah, and yet she does something despite her background that furthers the kingdom. Just because she's not part of the inside group doesn't mean that she doesn't recognize what's right or wrong, or have.
And she allies herself with the God of Israel.
It's hard not to say Jesus, right? Because I keep thinking
it is. It's hard to say not say Jesus, but yeah, I mean that's the key thing, and it's the key thing with Ruth too. is there's a faith there. Her identity is not Moabite, even though everybody calls her a Moabite. She has clearly rejected that identity, and chosen the identity of being with the people of God. And Rahab did the same thing. And this is in part why Boaz is doing what he's doing. Yes, he recognizes the hard work and he blesses that, but it has been known in the town that she has chosen this people to be her people, even though the racism and all that sort of stuff. So, which brings with something I wanted to talk about, which had to do with, in our society today, we're so tribalistic, which for people who don't know what that means is we break up along these lines, and if they're in my tribe, then we fully deeply aligned with them. And typically it's along political lines, but it's also cultural lines and race lines and all this sort of stuff. Is that a decent enough definition to you?
Yeah. Well, there's a group of people that you're comfortable with, and you don't necessarily deviate from that group. You want to be comfortable, and to deviate from that group is uncomfortable.
And it's your deepest allegiance is to that. And what I want to encourage us is to recognize that it's fine to be part of different tribes, sure, but I really want us to have our deepest allegiance to be to our faith, because that's what's going to help cross some of these lines, whether it's political lines or race lines or all these different factions in our world, and say, we don't agree on all this stuff, but man, I'm going to bless you and I'm going to take care of you. And we're the same people because we both love Jesus. So it breaks my heart when Christians fight.
Yeah. Well, Ruth and Rahab are just wonderful examples. And I expect that's probably, or that very possibly why Boaz responded to her the way that he did.
I think
of these
so.
people who are clearly outside of the holy, that are brought into the holy.
Right.
And that, I see that, and this part of this is me projecting a bit, is that from the tribalism perspective that you're discussing, that is, we keep people at arm's length because we're uncomfortable with them. We may be missing out on the blessings that a Rahab and her descendants bring, and the blessings that a Ruth and her descendants bring.
And we need to fight against that dividing, just like he did, because in his culture there was good reasons for him not to associate with her, to not give her the time of day, or to bless her, or to take care of her. She was a Moabite.
Nobody would have blinked an eye. Nobody would have blinked an eye if he would have just said, "You need to go someplace else."
Oh, no one,
right? It would have been, that would be what is expected,
right?
And that's one of the things that you alluded to but didn't say specifically is he wanted her protected from molestation, effectively, right? That stay here, you're going to be safe here, because you're very likely not going to be safe in somebody else's field. Right.
He knew very well, with the time of the days of the judges. As a single woman with no men to protect her, she's likely to be raped. Yeah. And so this is part of the reason why he wanted her to be there. Yeah. Which says something about his character, that he doesn't allow that at all, that he cares and he protects all of his people, and then he raises her up and gives not just that's the kind of stuff he would do kind of for everybody, but he treats her even more special by treating her first like a servant girl, even though she's not one of his servant girls, and then actually serving her at the lunchtime, which is really unusual. So the privileges that he gives to her is just so way beyond normal.
How do you think he was perceived by his peers for his behavior? Was that, I think it's exceptional, but because the typically it would be a dismissive response, right? or
Right.
like I don't need to pay attention to her. But would he have been received as somebody who was doing something exceptional in a positive way, or like, why are you bothering with this, or
Right.
what is wrong with you? I mean, I think there's a few different shades in there.
Right. And yeah, I think we don't know
I
because
know.
there's no information, but I I imagine that there certainly would be some people that would whisper behind his back or to his face,
Yeah.
"What the heck are you doing?" There may be some that'd be like, "Well, that's interesting, huh?" And maybe one or two people that are like, that affirming of it, because not everybody is wicked during the days of Judges, but yeah, yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if he had to stand up to it, to the social pressure to stop doing what he's doing.
Yeah. What it makes me think a little bit of is with Jesus, with as he is spending time with tax collectors and
Mm-hmm.
prostitutes, that there's definitely a sense of you're not supposed to do that. And I wondered if
Ooh,
Boaz
yeah.
had a similar experience that, I mean, okay, you're doing that, but I mean, yeah, you're an
Wow.
upstanding man. I don't think this reflects well upon you.
Oh, yeah. Do what's good for your interest. People are going to talk and that might hurt your financial interest. They may not want to do business with you. Do what's good for you and don't do the right thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think there's so much to learn. This is a story that I think we often, um, there's so many, there's two things that I think of about this story that are kind of, let's call it mainstream. One is that here's Ruth, aligning herself with Naomi, and what a beautiful representation of
Mhm.
supporting people. I see women who look at the Ruth and Naomi relationship and say, I want that relationship between myself and somebody else. And it's
Mhm.
about relationship between women. And then people see it as this kind of romantic story of, and I look at it, I suppose, as much as anything about cultural, counterculturalism, that
Mhm.
recognizing that God is working through our, the whole scandalous nature of Christ and love and that kind of
Mhm.
stuff, and saying, hey, I'm going to do what's right despite what culture, even within my faith, is telling me, I don't know, that might be a little sketchy,
Yeah.
buddy. I love
Yeah.
that.
I think those are all valid in the sense that stories can have multiple lessons
Yeah. Yeah.
being taught, whether it's a good example, whether it's a rejection of various values or embracing of values. I mean, there's all of these things. I do think the core point is God and Naomi's relationship and her frustration and anger at God.
Mm.
Has God not, has he abandoned his love for me? Is he unfaithful to me? And that's because Naomi, if you just look at story wise, who is the main driver of the entire story? It's Naomi. It's not Ruth, and she's the main setup at the beginning. She's the one that ends the story, and it keeps coming back to, as we're going to talk about next Sunday, on this amazing exclamation: "The Lord has not forgotten his hesed to me," and it's like, okay.
Yeah.
And of course that leads eventually to the whole to David and then to Jesus, and then if you put this in the reading this in the context of post exile, it's like, okay, the big lesson for the people of God is he's not forgotten you either, even though you're in exile, even though you're not, things are rough, and your life is as dark as Naomi, and maybe it's like you don't have your wife or your husband that you want. I mean, there's so many things that are ugly in life right now, but he's not forgotten you. His faithful love will take care of you, and it'll happen in these little common details that you don't see the bigger reason for it, like walking into the wrong field or the right field at the right day.
Right.
and you don't know,
Yeah.
and you won't know
And
until
there's, it's funny because as I do remember in my 20s and wondering about what God had in store for me, that there was definitely a consistent message of stop worrying about it. Live this way that you've been tasked with living, and He's got this figured out.
yeah,
And that's so hard,
it's so hard.
Yeah.
But there we go.
Yeah.
This is the beautiful story of Ruth and Naomi and Boaz. So, all right. So it's good to see you.
Good to see
Good
you.
to hear your, try to not get too hot out there.
No, I'm going to go right back. I'm going to hit some teriyaki sauce and then finish up those chicken thighs, and then it's yakisoba.
Yummy. All right. All right. You have a great night.
All right. Take
Thanks
care.
for catching us. Goodbye.
Bye.